Thank you for joining us and taking just a few minutes to review some common reactions and coping strategies children and youth might experience following a disaster or traumatic event. When we're aware of what these reactions and strategies might be, we are more able to support their trauma recovery in positive and helpful ways. We are Belanti.net, a training, research, and consultation organization focused on threat assessment and disaster behavioral health trainings and services. My name is Lisa Squires, and my co-presenter is Steve Sanchez. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Lisa.
Are you there? Oh,
I
you are
am.
there. Okay, great. Between us, we have degrees in social work, education, and school counseling, and have a long history of working with youth on topics of grief and loss, addiction, and trauma. When children experience a trauma, watch one on television, or overhear others discussing it, they can feel scared, confused, or anxious, often reacting differently than adults. Interestingly, some react right away, while others may show signs that they're having a difficult time much later. Some possible behavior changes cross over all ages, including regressive behaviors like thumb sucking and bedwetting. They may develop new or increased fears of the dark or strangers. You might also see a need for more attention, physical comfort, and security. Be aware their eating and sleeping habits may change. They may also develop digestive problems or aches and pains. It is possible that they may become increasingly more aggressive, withdrawn, or even disobedient. Steve, can you share with us some of the reactions that we might see?
Thanks, Lisa. And there are some reactions that are more age specific that we would like to review with our listeners. Infants and toddlers can't understand traumatic events, but they can internalize their caregivers' upset reactions. They may show similar emotions as their caregivers or act differently than usual, such as crying for no apparent reason, withdrawing from people's attention, or stopping their normal play patterns. You might observe them developing new insecurities, such as an increased need for physical touch and reassurance that they're safe. They may become physically clingy and not want to be left alone. 3 to 5 year olds are at a developmental stage where they can understand, to some extent, the effects of the traumatic experience. This age group may have much greater difficulty adjusting to the changes and loss, resulting in greater dependence on adults to help them feel safe. Often, they become clingy because of their need for that physical security. Children and young people in the ages of 6 to 19 may have some of the same reactions as younger children, including wanting more attention and exhibiting regressive behaviors. They often stop doing work at school or home and feel guilty or helpless because they can't take on adult roles in response to the disaster. 6 to 10-year-olds may fear leaving home. They may stop spending time with friends or even become agitated or aggressive for absolutely no reason. They may have difficulty paying attention and start performing poorly at school. They may tend to act younger than their age and also display regressive behaviors. 11 to 19-year-olds are going through many physical and emotional changes related to puberty, so it may be even harder for them to cope with the traumatic experience. Older teens may actually be in denial of the effects of the trauma, and they may respond with silence or routine, "I'm okay," yet complain about physical aches and pains, which are a product of their emotional difficulties. They may become resistant, argumentative, or start engaging in risky behaviors such as drugs, alcohol, and sex, all as a method of self-medication. If this happens, quick intervention is required, especially if the risky behaviors manifest themselves.
Yes, Steve, that is so important. But equally important to remember is that children and youth are quite resilient, and most of the time, with the right support, that they can thrive and recover quickly. It's most helpful to make sure that children feel connected, loved, and cared about. It's important to be intentional about taking time to pay attention to them, be a good listener, and help children express their emotions. This can be especially difficult if you've also experienced the traumatic event and are dealing with your own emotional overload. We want to allow children to talk about their trauma event if they so desire, while accepting their feelings and letting them know that it's okay to feel sad, upset, or stressed. Crying can be a healthy way to alleviate stress or satisfy grief, and it's okay for them to see adults crying or sad. However, please try to refrain from showing intense emotions, which can be very scary for children and youth. We want to allow children to ask questions, and we want to provide them with appropriate answers for their developmental stage. Be mindful of trauma triggers, such as news coverage, the internet, and even video games, limiting access so they have time away from traumatic events. Reminders. It's important to not let trauma talk take over family or classroom discussions. Encourage helpful activities that support children's communities and friends. Helping others is a great trauma coping skill that allows them to see the good that can come out of a traumatic event. It also helps them feel needed and part of a community. Make sure that they know they are not to blame when disasters happen. Be careful not to blame a cultural, racial, or ethnic group or a person with a mental health disability. Blame does not benefit healing. It only increases anger and frustration. Please model self-care by having a healthy routine and diet, getting enough sleep and exercise, taking deep breaths, and using other relaxation techniques to handle stress. Encourage your children to join in these activities. Taking care of yourself makes you more available to support the children that you care about. Steve, do you have any good communication tips for talking with youth and teens?
Yes, Lisa, thanks so much. We'd like to end our time together by providing some age-appropriate tips for talking with children and youth. For the very young, it's important to provide a lot of cuddling and verbal support, focusing on them, not their trauma or their traumatic event. Get down to their eye level, speaking in a calm, gentle voice, using words that they can understand. And keep it simple, validating your care for them and your desire to make them feel safe. For older children and young people, feel free to ask them what worries them and what might help them cope. Spend more time with them than usual, offering comfort with gentle words and a hug when appropriate, checking in with them in non-intrusive ways. Appropriate physical contact can release stress, and your presence alone may be enough to help. Be schedule and routine flexible for a few days following the traumatic event, but get back to routines as quickly as possible at home and at school. Normal routines provide special security. Support participation in recreational, family, community, and friend activities while providing quiet times for children to de-stress and to relax. Now, Lisa and I would like to provide a very important note of caution. Be very careful not to pressure children or youth to talk about a trauma or to join in expressive activities. Talking about the event will only be helpful when the children themselves are ready to do so, and any pressure to revisit the event can do more harm than good. Children's voluntary discussion, however, can be extremely healing. Lisa, you have any final thoughts?
Thanks, Steve. I do. It is possible that in some instances, a child or their family may have difficulty getting past the trauma. When this is the case, speaking with a mental health professional is critical in helping identify the areas of difficulty and providing a support plan, especially if a child has experienced the death of a loved one or a close pet. Consider working with someone who understands how to support grieving kids. Lastly, remember that most children are very resilient, and adult support and reassurance is key to helping children through traumatic experiences. Thank you for your own concern and interest in providing that support.